The first time I saw Tyler sleeping naked, I thought I was hallucinating. It was late, past midnight, and I had just gotten home from a brutal shift at the bar. My feet ached, my shirt clung to my skin, and all I wanted was to collapse into bed without thinking about the mountain of dishes waiting for me in the sink. But as I passed Tyler's slightly open door, something caught my eye. A shadow. A shape. I froze. For a split second, I thought someone had broken in. But then the moonlight streaming through his window shifted just enough to reveal his body, stretched across the bed, completely bare. I should have looked away. I wanted to look away. But I didn't. The soft rise and fall of his chest. The way the sheets barely covered his waist. The lazy sprawl of his arm, fingers twitching in sleep. My pulse hammered. This was not okay. I forced myself to move, gripping my bag tighter as I hurried to my room. Once inside, I slammed the door behind me, heart racing. What the hell was that? I pressed my back against the door, squeezing my eyes shut. Tyler was straight. He was my roommate, my best friend. And now I had seen him in a way I shouldn't have. I shook my head, willing the image to fade from my mind, but it was burned into my brain. The curve of his back. The way his muscles shifted as he breathed. The sheer, effortless beauty of him. I groaned, shoving my face into my hands. I had to ignore this. I would ignore this. But deep down, I already knew the truth. This wasn't the last time I'd see Tyler like that. And that was a problem. I tried to forget. I really did. But when you live with someone, you notice things. Little things. Like the way Tyler would walk around the apartment after a shower, a towel slung low around his hips, completely unbothered by his own body. Or how he sprawled out on the couch in just his boxers, legs spread wide like he owned the space. He wasn't trying to tease me. He wasn't even thinking about it. That was the problem. Because I was thinking about it. Every single time. Dude, are you even listening? I blinked, snapping back to reality. Tyler was staring at me from across the kitchen island, one brow raised as he stirred a protein shake. His messy blonde hair was still damp from the shower, a few stray drops sliding down his collarbone. I swallowed hard. Not now, brain. Yeah, I lied, rubbing the back of my neck. What were you saying? He rolled his eyes. I said, do you want to go out tonight? Or are you still being a hermit? I'm not a hermit, I shot back. Bro, you literally turned down 3 invites last week, he said, pointing at me with his shaker bottle. Come on, live a little. I hesitated. Going out meant drinking. And drinking meant lowered inhibitions. And lowered inhibitions meant, bad idea. I've got work tomorrow, I said instead. Tyler scoffed. Since when do you care about showing up to work fully functional? I shrugged, avoiding his gaze. Since I started thinking about you naked, I wanted to say. But obviously, I didn't. I should have stayed home. But Tyler was relentless, and somehow, an hour later, I found myself at a crowded bar, nursing a beer while he played pool with a group of his friends. I tried to focus on anything but him. The music, the flashing neon lights, the cute bartender who was definitely flirting with me. It almost worked. Until Tyler leaned against the bar beside me, his arm brushing mine as he reached for his drink. You're being weird, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I tensed. I'm not being weird. He smirked, eyes glinting with amusement. Oh, you definitely are. His voice had a teasing edge, but there was something else in it too. Something curious. I turned to face him. Too close. Too much. Tyler. But before I could finish, some random girl appeared beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck. There you are, she giggled, pressing herself against him. Come dance with me. Tyler laughed, setting his drink down. Guess I'm dancing, he said, winking at me before letting the girl drag him toward the dance floor. I exhaled sharply, gripping my beer like it was a lifeline. I needed to leave. I knew this was dangerous. I knew this was stupid. But no matter how hard I tried to deny it, I was jealous. When we got home that night, Tyler was drunk. Not wasted, but tipsy enough that his usual filters were gone. "That girl was all over you," I said, tossing my keys onto the counter. He groaned, flopping onto the couch. "Yeah, and she smelled like vanilla vodka." I smirked. "Could be worse." He cracked one eye open. "Could be you." My breath caught. He was joking. He had to be. But then his gaze lingered just a little too long, and my chest tightened. Did he know? No. Impossible. He sighed and stretched, his shirt riding up to expose a strip of toned stomach. "You're still being weird," he murmured, eyes half-lidded. I swallowed hard, forcing a laugh. "Maybe you're just drunk." "Maybe." Silence. The air between us felt heavy. Then, Tyler sat up, his expression unreadable. "Have, can I ask you something?" My heart pounded. "Sure. Have you ever wanted to do something you're not supposed to?" I felt hot all over. His words hung in the air, unanswered. And for the first time since we became roommates, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one fighting something unspoken. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional drip of the bathroom faucet. Tyler had disappeared into his room a while ago, leaving me alone with my thoughts. But those were the last things I wanted to be alone with. I wasn't sure how long I sat on the couch, staring at the same unread notification on my phone, before I heard it, the soft creak of a door opening. I looked up just in time to see Tyler stepping out of his room. Naked. Again. I froze. His hair was messy from sleep, his jaw shadowed with faint stubble. His body moved with the kind of effortless confidence that came from never thinking twice about being seen. He wasn't showing off. He wasn't trying to make a statement. This was just him. And that made it worse. I should have looked away. I should have left the room. But I couldn't. My pulse pounded in my ears as he walked past me, completely unfazed, heading toward the kitchen. I forced myself to exhale, gripping the couch cushions like they could somehow keep me grounded. "Didn't know you were still up," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. I swallowed. "Yeah. Just thinking." He opened the fridge, the cool light illuminating the sharp planes of his back. Dangerous thing to do at this hour. I forced a laugh, but it barely came out. My throat was too dry. My thoughts too loud. He grabbed a water bottle and turned back to face me, leaning casually against the counter. His body was bathed in shadow, moonlight slipping in through the window, accentuating the curve of muscle, the dip of his collarbone, the faint sheen of warmth still clinging to his skin. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't breathing. "Something on your mind?" he asked, taking a slow sip. I shook my head too quickly. "No. Just, long day." He hummed in response, watching me over the rim of the bottle. There was something unreadable in his expression. Something too aware. Too knowing. I tried to move. To break whatever the hell this was. But my body refused to cooperate, locking me in place as he set his water down and took a few slow steps toward me. And then, suddenly, he was right in front of me. Close enough that I could see the faint scar near his hip. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off his skin. Close enough that I could smell him, clean, familiar, intoxicating. I opened my mouth to say something. Anything. But then his hand came up, not touching, just hovering. Near my shoulder. Near my jaw. Near everything. I couldn't move. I didn't move. His fingers twitched, barely brushing against my skin. Not a full touch. Not quite. His lips parted slightly, his breath warm against my cheek. My heart was slamming against my ribs. This wasn't happening. But it was. I could see the hesitation flicker across his face, the conflict tightening his jaw. He was thinking about it. Or maybe I was just imagining that he was thinking about it. But when his fingers finally ghosted over the side of my neck, just for a second, just barely, I sucked in a sharp breath. That was all it took. He blinked, eyes flicking to mine like he'd suddenly realized what he was doing. Then, without a word, he pulled back. Turned away. Walked back to his room. Left the door open. And I sat there, staring at the darkened hallway, not knowing what the hell had just happened, or what it meant. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every nerve in my body still on fire. The room felt too hot, the sheets too rough against my skin, and no matter how much I tried to convince myself that I had imagined it, that it was nothing, it wasn't nothing. Tyler had touched me. Barely. But it had been enough. And worse? He'd left his door open. I thought about it for hours. Whether it meant something. Whether it was an invitation. Whether I should have gotten up and walked through that open door. But I hadn't. And by the time the sun crept through my blinds, the apartment was filled with nothing but silence. When I finally got up, I hesitated outside his door. It was closed now. Like nothing had happened. Like it had been a mistake that he had already erased. I told myself that was fine. That it was better this way. But then I walked into the kitchen, and there he was. Tyler, sitting on the counter, scrolling through his phone like it was any other morning. He was wearing sweats this time. A shirt. Like some kind of unspoken reset button had been hit overnight. He glanced up when I walked in. I waited for something. Some kind of acknowledgement. Nothing. Morning, he said, like the past few hours hadn't happened at all. I forced a nod. Morning. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Could feel the weight of last night pressing down on my chest. My pulse spiked, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he didn't. Instead, he slid off the counter, stretched, and walked past me without another word. And just like that, I knew. He was going to pretend it never happened. And maybe I should too. Except, I wasn't sure if I could. Because now, every time he walked into a room, my body reacted before my brain could stop it. Every time his arm brushed mine, I felt it. Every time he stretched, or yawned, or looked at me too long, I remembered what it felt like to be so close, to almost touch, to almost cross a line. It wasn't just me anymore. Something between us had shifted. I could feel it every second we were in the same room. The unspoken weight pressing down on both of us. The way we moved around each other carefully, deliberately, like two magnets trying not to snap together. It wasn't normal. And it wasn't going away. No matter how much we both tried to ignore it. The tension was unbearable. Days passed and we didn't talk about it. Not once. Not even in the smallest, most casual way. But the silence said everything. Every interaction felt heavier now, like we were both balancing on a thin wire, knowing one wrong step could send us spiraling. It was in the way Tyler hesitated before sitting next to me on the couch, leaving just a little too much space between us. It was in the way I caught him staring when he thought I wasn't looking. It was in the way my body tensed every time he walked past me, half waiting for something, a touch, a word, a confession. But neither of us made a move. Neither of us acknowledged what was right there. Until the night it almost happened again. I was in my room, trying, and failing, to focus on anything but him. The soft sounds of the TV in the living room filtered through the walls. I knew he was still awake. I knew I should just go to sleep. But then, a knock at my door. I stiffened. Tyler never knocked. I sat up, my heart already pounding, because I knew. I knew before I even opened the door that something was about to happen. I turned the knob, and there he was. Standing in the dim hallway, jaw tense, hands clenched at his sides like he was fighting something inside himself. I opened my mouth to ask what was wrong, but I never got the chance. Because then he stepped forward, just enough to close the space between us. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath, see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. And then, barely above a whisper, "Tell me I'm not crazy." His voice was raw, unsteady, like he didn't even know if he wanted the answer. Like he wasn't sure which truth would be worse. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing, every part of me screaming to say something, do something. But before I could, before I even had the chance to process what was happening, Tyler exhaled sharply, shook his head, and stepped back. And then, just like that, he walked away. leaving me standing in the doorway, breathless, heart hammering, mind spinning with one impossible question. What happens now?